I've been raised with such a Persian upbringing. Not, I wouldn't say such a Persian upbringing, but a good part of me has that connection to it. It's been a part of me. I've always been able to connect to that side whenever I'm with family, friends with family, or just through social media that has that those little spots that are Persian.
Yeah.
And I definitely love just being able to connect to the history and the culture because it's so rich. There's so much to it, and I do feel like I belong, or I feel like I'm a part of something.
Yeah.
Do I connect well with it? I would say half the time.
Welcome to So Where Are You From? I'm your host, Nooshin Bagheri, a first-generation Iranian-American by identity and an immigration attorney by profession. Today we have a very unique guest, and where I, the host, get to be critiqued by my own guest. And that guest is my oldest son, Shaheen Bagheri, joining us today. Shaheen just turned 18, is entering his last year of high school, and will soon take off to create his own path in life. So it seems fitting, before he starts forging his own path, to take inventory of comparing his viewpoint with a diluted second-generation Iranian-American upbringing compared to mine. This generation doesn't realize how easy they had it. Of all the accolades, degrees, and achievements, being a mom to my two boys has been the hardest yet most rewarding position I held, where I try to dedicate those 18 years that they are under my wings to mold them to empathetic, self-aware, giving, and grateful human beings. Thank you for joining me, Shaheen.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm pretty good.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Your shot at being honest about your mom.
Yeah.
So, Shaheen, as I ask all my guests, where are you from?
I am born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and by ethnicity, I am Persian, as you would
I like
guess.
that. Very nice. So I think it's really cool that there is not a lot of mother-child relationship where they're born in the same city. I, a Piedmont baby, and you, a Northside baby.
Uh-huh.
I think it's pretty cool that sometimes we'll drive around the city and I could point out, it's like, oh, look, that's where I had my first car accident. That's where I went to school, or that's where I had my birthday parties. I think it's a unique experience to have that, because in this world and the careers, everyone's just like torn apart, like not torn apart, like everyone moves around this great big world and it's like apart from one another.
Definitely.
But to have this, be in the same city, it's pretty unique. So first, I think it's always funny because anytime I say I have an 18-year-old son, people are shocked by that. Some people think we're brothers and sisters. Before I would get the eye roll on that comment, but now I think you've kind of like warmed up to it.
You convinced me somehow.
Yes. You're not going to make me feel old. But it's interesting because when I had you, I was 27 years old. And at that time, that was normal that after you finish your education, which I finished my graduate degree, my master's degree, that one gets married and then has kids. That was kind of like the community cultural expectations. Always, the community's never satisfied. They're like, you're done with school. It's like, when are you getting married? You get married, when are you going to have your child? When you have your first child, when are you going to have your second one? So it wasn't like I was such a young person at the time, but it is interesting because none of my friends at that time were getting married or had kids. So when I had my first child, I didn't have that mommy support group, and so I had to navigate motherhood pretty much on my own. And this is like I don't know if it's pre-internet, but definitely before the iPhones, before social media. All we had was those books at Barnes & Nobles to kind of give you a heads up of what to expect when you're pregnant, or what to expect raising a child. So it's like, I would joke with you that we both, we grew up together in a sense. And I feel bad that as the first child, you had to take the brunt of it. But I think it came out unscathed, no?
Maybe. I think so. I like to think that.
I like to think that too.
Yeah.
But so how would you describe my parenting style?
This is an interesting question. I would say it is is necessarily strict.
Oh, I like that.
I thought about this a little while ago when I was probably through high school, but I would define it as necessarily strict because is the right in between being an extreme traditionalist strict parent and being a very loose parent. It's right in the middle where you have that you have the necessity of being strict and being able to help have some form of mold to help to create a really good upbringing of a child while being able to let them have their own independent thought, their own opinion, to be able to talk and that allows to develop that respect for one another's opinions. So I would say it's very necessary because too much of either of that could cause issues or consequences, but having just that perfect balance allows you to create something really good. And I like to say I'm very good with that too.
Oh my God, you're bringing like tears to my eyes. It's like a happy moment. Yeah, you know, I really, that's the first time I've heard you say this, so people may think this is like scripted, but it's like, that's the first time I heard you from your perspective, and I appreciate that. I think what I came into, once again, I came in, being a mom, I didn't have any like, you know, support group or anybody to look to kind of bounce ideas off. So I did the best I could. And I did it with also the perspective of, not that, you know, I came up with a stricter upbringing, and it was not necessarily a bad thing. It's just what my parents knew. They didn't know any better. They came to this country, didn't know like my mom didn't know English. She raised, you know, she tried to do all the holidays, the Halloweens, the Thanksgivings as best she could, the birthday parties. But yeah, like my dad was more traditional on maintaining that culture, the values of being Iranian. So it was kind of hard because I couldn't, one, diversity in Atlanta back then was not a lot. So I was the only brown kid, only Muslim, only Iranian in my whole high school. There's like maybe 2 other African Americans, and that was it. Yeah. So the ability to assimilate, they didn't understand how I felt because I was never asked, how do you feel during this stage? Like we didn't really talk to our parents because we already knew they were going through so much already themselves that we didn't want to burden them. So you just kind of get through those tough years until you get to college and your world opens up. But I think my method was, because I know how that felt, I didn't want to hold you back. And weirdly enough, what would get me is you go to a small school, and it wasn't until like middle school that you too were going through the same thing, being the only brown Muslim child. Yeah. And I'm like, really, in this day and age? But luckily the headmasters changed, and you know, more diversity came in. But still, you're I think the only Middle Eastern, Middle Eastern mom, you know, the crazy Middle Eastern mom. But I've always wanted you to assimilate, definitely not feel left out, try to let you partake in what all the other kids are doing, but yet to a limit. There were some things my Middle Eastern roots just would not allow me to do, would not allow me to say yes to, and they will pop up because, you know, I still have those values and ethics, and yes, I want you to assimilate, but yeah, remember who you are and where you came from.
Definitely.
I think another aspect of me raising you guys was, I've always told you that I'm not your friend, I'm your parent. I think you have plenty of friends. And I do not need to secure my love for you guys by appeasing you guys to have everything and anything that you wanted. That my role was to protect you, to guide you, to create a strong foundation before you are to take off in this world. I've always had the back cop badge, but I hold it very much pride. I think like I left a mark on some of your, you know, friends. But one thing but even though with my strictness, one thing I changed from how I was raised, that back then, you know, our parents and many of my friends, my generation would say same, like when our parents said no, it was no. There was no discussion, nothing about it. And no reason. And I always felt like that was unfair. It's like, why? Why can't we discuss this? You know, why aren't you seeing my view? Or I try to bring that in with you guys. When I would say no to you guys, I would give a reason. And you guys were pretty cool about it, where, yeah, you may not have been happy about it, but you always would come back and be like, okay, I get it. I see why. And then, or at the other times, I try to open up discussions. I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? What's your opinion? Let's try to find a common ground. That's how I've tried to kind of lean a little bit more towards letting go of the traditional factor of it. It is a strict balance. It is hard. Yes. It's hard on us because it's hard to say no to your kids, but somebody's got to do it. Yeah. And I realized, I think another hard part was that I see a lot of parents are scared to say no to their kids. And they're scared to say no because they just want to be on their good terms, or I don't know what the reason is. And it's funny because many times, like for example, with your younger brother or even you, there will be a time where there's something going on with the kids, like a gathering, and I just didn't want my son to be there. I didn't think it was right. He didn't need to be there. Like, say a back-to-back sleepover. I'm like, one sleepover is enough. And then I would have another parent just kind of say, no, why not? You should let him, this, that. And my child was the only one that wasn't allowed to have the 2 sleepovers. He could do 1. And the parent would be like, why not? And I'm like, listen, one's enough. You know, they don't need to have access to everything and do everything all at once. And then the mom will always come back to me. He's like, you know what? You're right. I agree it's a lot, but I just can't say no to my child. And I'm like, what? Why? Yes, you can say no to your child. You're making my job harder because mine's the only child being told no. But there's other parents that feel the same way, but they're scared. I don't know, that cultural thing, the non-Middle Eastern families, more, I guess, American families are scared to say no to their children. And to me, that's a shock because I think like we were always told no, that we accepted it. Yeah. But yeah, so I do stand my ground, and it's funny. I realize a lot of the parents are scared to say no to their kids, and I'm like, that's your job as a parent. I have felt bad that there have been some activities I would and like I say, I would never say no, but I would give you my reasons and why I don't believe in it, like certain activities to partake in, and you sometimes may be the only one that don't partake in the full activity and so forth. And like I say, I bring out that Middle Eastern part of me, the values, the ethics, that this is not who we are, this is not what we do. How does that make it hard on you in fitting in?
Can you repeat the question, or let me?
So the question is, so when I hold you back from doing certain things your group of friends are doing, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's that my whole perception and how I react has definitely changed over time. When I was younger, I didn't give much of a second thought. What happened. I was more naive then. As I grew older, and that in between stage, I understood the answer. I didn't understand why, or I was young. I kind of wanted what I wanted. I didn't have the whole perception of others and that idea. But as I definitely get older, the whole idea of being held back, I never really actually was mad about it, or never did I disagree. I always respected the fact that she would always say your reason why and talk about it. I never felt afraid to talk about it or have my opinion about it, because then we have a proper, well-controlled debate over our reasons and why we should go for our own opinions, or why my opinion, or I think my opinion should be taken into more consideration, or why your opinion should be more considered. And that's and through that I've had a lot more respect. And sometimes an outcome from something like that where you might say no, I would be like, okay, fine. I'll be a little mad, maybe no more than an hour. Then after that, I would be over. But rarely am I ever mad. I'm always respecting of a response, and I actually rarely ever disagree. I rarely ever disagree at the end.
No, you've been amazing and very understanding. And do you get pushback from your friends, or are they understanding of other parenting styles?
My friends have a very light grasp of that whole idea of that ethnic Middle Eastern family household. Through probably like several conversations and just experiences, they start to realize that my situation's different. But despite that, I don't think that's ever actually played a factor in my relationship, because my relationships are more based on who I am, not how I can do this or can't do that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I found that to be better, because I'm not the only one who has a family like this. Yes, it can be hard for them to understand, but they at least they're not disregarding you or treating you any less for it.
Yeah, and they're not making you feel singled out or anything. No, see, that's the thing, is your group of friends, you should have always friends who understand, who support, and understand where you're coming from. That's what real friendship is. So it's funny because the certain things I don't let you partake in, I'm just like, I tell my kids, like, dude, you guys have way more of a social life than I ever had. Your social life is on fleek. I wish I had what you had. And but it never seems enough. It's like you give the kids like an inch and they want a foot. Sometimes I'll be nervous to tell my parents, your grandparents, of things I let you guys do, because I was like, if I were to do that, they could understand that concept. Like, for example, driving, getting your license. Well, I did make you withhold getting your license one extra year compared to everybody else, because 16 is young to be driving, so you had to wait till 17.
It was 15 when you get a permit, but license 16. Yes. I didn't get my permit till 16.
Yeah, you didn't get your permit till 16, so I delayed everything 1 year. For your own safety.
Yes.
And for my well-being. But I was nervous to tell your grandparents that, hey, you're driving at 17, you got a car, all of this. Because I didn't get to do till I was 20. And guess what? Their reaction is like, oh, good, he should. You should get him a car. He should be driving. And I'd be like, who are you? It's like these grandparents are completely different people. I don't recognize them. Like, you guys get away with so much and so much encouragement that, the concept of, like, for example, you going away to college, like we were told we stay under undergrad. And I understood their reasoning, but we really didn't have a choice. We didn't really apply outside school. Or I'm trying to like kind of instill, stay in state for undergrad during that transition, be in a dorm, but at least you're close to home. Where I'm telling them, I'm showing you schools out of state. They're like, yes, he should. He has to go expand his wings. And I'm like, who are you? It's like, could you ever imagine your experience with your grandparents of them being strict, like how I describe them to be? Could you ever imagine that?
Yes, definitely. It's not just because of that, because through just my knowledge of that whole traditionalist lifestyle, I have a friend who has similar family dynamics, or just I have a pretty good understanding of that, and I know where you're coming from. It's no surprise when I hear this. I very much I could see where you're coming from majority of the time with this.
So you can kind of like, cut me some slack if I do have a little bit strictness, because I give a lot of leeway. But then part of my parenting style is also to balance, one, assimilating to the American culture, but yet exposing you to your Iranian side.
Yeah.
Your dad was born in Iran. I was born here, but my fully blooded Iranian. And so, you're second generation Iranian American in a sense. So I've always wanted to expose you to your Iranian side.
Yes.
And it's limited because I'm diluted. I remember a lot of people speak Farsi to their kids, and I try to do that with you.
Yeah.
But then it got to a point where doing like wooden blocks of animals, and I didn't even know this name in Farsi myself. So I'm like, how am I going to teach you to be fluent? So I tried the best I could. Like, for example, ever since you were born, every 2 years, I would take you to Iran. And, to meet your extended family, to know how life is over there, the culture. Yeah. I put you in Farsi classes, the dreaded Sunday Farsi language schools. Classes. Yeah. You got saved by COVID because you were doing really great. You got to third grade level, but then when COVID hit, it kind of stopped. And we backtracked a little bit.
Yeah.
But, and also just even the holidays, Persian New Year, trying to take you out to the community to see what the traditions are. And also another factor is the respect of elders. So yes. I think that's a very Middle Eastern thing, is the respect for elders, value family time,
yes.
Time with family, greeting people. The greeting people, I have to say, is like, I'm glad you've learned that. Like, I realize this generation of kids, they don't know how to greet an elder even when they enter a home. And that is something that, you would get the evil eye stare from your parent if you did not greet somebody older than you once you enter a room. And so I'm glad I've instilled that in you, and you handle it amazing. Like, you're able to go to adult networking events with us and able to strike a conversation because we've instilled that, the proper handshake, the salutations, and so forth. How much of the Persian heritage have you enjoyed learning, and do you feel connected to it?
I enjoy learning a lot about it because it is half of me. I've been raised with such a Persian upbringing. I wouldn't say such a Persian upbringing, but a good part of me has that connection to it. It's been a part of me. I've always been able to connect to that side whenever I'm with family, friends with family, or just through social media that has that those little spots that are Persian.
Yeah.
And I definitely love just being able to connect to the history and the culture because it's so rich. There's so much to it, and I do feel like I belong, or I feel like I'm a part of something.
Yeah.
Do I connect well with it? I would say half the time. It's a little difficult because on one hand, I have a very strong connection through my family and family friends, but on the other side, my social life and anything outside of that
little bubble
is bubbled, and it lacks that diversity, and let alone there's not many Persians, so I don't really have that time to connect, and I definitely feel like that has hindered my whole perception or just that connection to it.
Yeah.
Although I keep a strong connection through my family and all of that, it's still, I don't feel as connected as I ideally would want to. I definitely want to have that connection, but with such a limited environment, it can be very difficult.
I feel like for me, it was, we grew up in a bubble of our friends, our weekend playmates were just within the Iranian community. Like, we didn't really mingle with our classmates and stuff until college came. And college opened up, a diverse group of friends. And I think you can tap into it because you have these, ethnic social clubs. I remember there was a Persian club at Emory, and I took Farsi class at Emory, and there's a Muslim Student Association, and it was all universities. So there's always that chance to grasp it back. But yeah, right now your situation is very temporary. It's very kind of like an isolated situation,
yes.
But But it's good. I want you to learn. I want you to be able to adapt to a non-ethnic society because that's what we live in.
Yes.
And then you have the option to kind of tap into when you grow older. You have
Yes.
more access to it. So what parts would you wish you learned more about your Iranian community?
Really?
Iranian heritage.
I don't know if this really is considered part of the heritage, but I wish I was fluent in Farsi because that's
Yeah.
another like layer of bonding I can make with that whole side. Since I'm not really fluent in that, it can be difficult. I have some connection. I'm
Yeah.
decent at it. Oh, decent might be a stretch, but
I think that was one of the reasons I didn't want you guys to learn Farsi was so like me and your dad or with your grandparents we could talk and not guys understand something.
I still understood y'all.
I know you randomly would understand things that you shouldn't have. You typically wouldn't, and so it's always a shocker to
Yeah.
me.
No,
Like
it's
if I
always
speak
fun.
directly to you, you won't understand. But if I'm speaking to somebody else, you definitely understood.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works, but how has it been being like, so when like I said, I was only Muslim, Iranian.
Yeah.
I went to a small Episcopalian private school.
Yeah.
And I never like felt different by the students. Everyone was really kind, but I just couldn't like go to do the after school stuff that everyone was
Yeah.
hanging out with because my parents were strict. Like we went straight home
Yeah.
and so forth. But I left my mark. Like I remember, so we had Episcopalian priests because we had to go to mass and so forth every Wednesday. That they were so open-minded that they actually wanted me teach about Islam to my fellow classmates
Wow.
in Bible class. They were very respectful, so I had to give it to them. And actually, my last name, my maiden name, Farhid Vash, it was always so difficult to say that everyone always joke around. Like every time they did a roll call, there was a pause. I'm like, oh, that's me, because they couldn't say it. So I remember for graduation, I told the principals, like, you're going to get this right. So I made a huge pronunciation key they hung on his wall, and I left that impact of like, you're going to respect
Yeah.
different cultures and different names. And they did. They took it in. How does it feel within like your smaller school being Iranian Muslim kid in the class?
Well, to be honest, when I was really young, you're just put into a school. You wave to the first person you meet. That's your friend for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
As you get older, around when I was in middle school, when I started to notice I was more different than everyone else. I wouldn't say I wasn't like the other kids, but I would say like there was something else to me that the other kids didn't share.
Okay.
And I feel like that's when I started realizing like more of my heritage or who I am and the part of that identity being Muslim and Iranian. But at the same time, I didn't know really what to do with it, and I didn't know like how I should play that out, because I think this was out of being naive when I was younger, but I wasn't 100% like, I wasn't always very flaunting about my Persian identity, slightly because of fear, because when I was young, I never believed or I never felt like Iran had a really good connotation. So by saying Iranian, I feel like there were some looks, and I really kept that to myself. I was never afraid to answer a question where I'm from, but I would never be flaunting about it, or I would never go up to saying that, because I knew that there was something about it I didn't understand yet, but it was not a name you wanted to necessarily be associated with all the time.
Yeah.
And same with being Muslim. And then definitely as you get to high school, I've matured, I learned more about it, and I've tried to make that my own identity and come into myself, while my other friends are very respectful about it. But at the same time, I don't have very good connections with either of them, mostly because I live in that bubble. I have that whole side is just a bubble of lack of diversity. There's not much of people like me in that whole area, and the only way I can actually ever access my Iranian or Muslim self is through my family and that side. And that's made it more difficult, and I feel like being in that bubble has definitely changed who I am and how I've grown up, because I feel like I'm a diluted version of that too.
Yeah.
And I gotta somehow reconnect that to my original roots, and be able to find my own identity through that. But there's not a lot of us out there, and that's what makes it like very hard.
Yeah.
But I think through that I realized I need to be my own self.
Yes, but you've joined the minority club, and I'm very proud of you for that. And to kind of representation, like I know for Ramadan, when I do my donation drives, you did a bake sale. You initiated a bake sale to funds to go help the refugees, and I think that's amazing. It's just a little steps. It just takes that little steps that people remember. You leave your mark, and then hopefully the next levels of kids that come up, the school has become diverse, that there'll be more acknowledgement of it.
There is, but even with Minority Empowerment Club, I always felt like I was the minority in the minority.
Oh my God.
I complained to that. I remember day one, I was like, this doesn't feel right. I just still don't feel like I completely belong, and I feel like that's when that was like the key point. Was like, I need to be my own person, and I need to find my own people. And that's why when I get older or college, I want to be able to find my own group of people that are like me, who have the same background as me. Because I think it's very ironic to be a minority in a minority empowerment club.
That is so interesting.
It's really,
I never knew that.
I think in this way it's funny, but it can be a little problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you'll have that chance. They're out there.
Yeah.
They're out there. But do you have any kind of tips for parents like me who, we're trying to break that cycle of how our parents were raised, bringing the old country mentality here, trying to, break that cycle so you're allowed to assimilate and not feel so, separated from your peers. Do you have any advice, like
for
parenting styles?
I would say that one thing I think is very important is to establish respect and trust between your child,
Yes.
and to be able to allow them to be their own person. I'm not saying let go, but allow them to have their own thoughts, their own opinions. Allow them to debate and develop that whole idea. So they're not going to the world with a one-track mind.
Yeah.
They have options. They know how to think. They know how to take in the world or process the world and do what they know is right to their own morals and to their own their own interests.
Yes. No, that's has been my thing. Like right before, you take off for college, parenting doesn't come with a handbook. And so everyone thinks that parents should know it all, but we ourselves are just learning along the way.
Yeah.
You've taught me so much. Like as my first child, you've taught me so much. You opened my eyes to things I haven't seen or done. And I think, and I mess up too. I mess up. And I think another thing that I try to add to it is that I apologize. I apologize because I want my kids to know I am human too. We're going to make mistakes. We'll figure this out. So yes, I think like the previous generation, they don't see children as independent people or independent viewpoints, and that's why I've tried to do it with YouTube boys.
They try to make the parents try to make themselves into the child and make it like as if this is them and they're trying to rebuild themselves.
They're trying to put their dreams into their child.
Yes.
Where I've always been like, no, I want to develop you, who you are, So like I say, parenting is exhausting, but what it is the consistency. Like I only have a few good years, and that's like really up to, I say, 13, the teenage years, that you could put all the foundation, you had to build that strong foundation of values, ethics, a good heart, and so forth. Put all that in because as you get older, after 13 over, when you go off into having your own friends and going out there, it's like you have to let go and you just have to pray that what I've taught you, it carries on outside the home. And that's all I can do. And so those are critical years that you have to be consistent in your parenting style and your rules because the kids are going to test you. They're going to test you and you want to like break and be like, just take it, just go. But you can't because then after that, that's a key critical time of raising a child. And then after that, you have no say. Like even now when we have discussions, for example, you're 18 in the American mindset, you're an adult, which in Middle Eastern, no, you're not an adult. You belong to us forever. But so it's an interesting year that we have together where you're 18, technically you can make your own decisions. I can't sign off on your, consent forms anymore, which is weird to me. But yet you're still 1 year under my roof left. And so it's like I can't say really no to you anymore, but that's where at least you tell me what's going on. I'm to a point where I'll just tell you my beliefs, what I feel, and then I allow you to make that decision. And, because one other thing I always tell you guys, I've lived my life. I've made my choices. I live my life. This is your life. I'm just guiding you, and whatever decision you make is going to have a good consequence or a bad consequence. But that is up to you, and you got to choose your life. You're not living your life for me. I've lived it. I've done it. I've done the school thing. This is yours. I'm just guiding of what I know.
Definitely.
But of course, it's funny that anything I do say lately, it gets Google fact-checked by teenagers.
They're not important things.
And they realize parents do know a thing or two.
Okay.
And another aspect I've always said to you as raising you when I would say no to certain things, activities, is that the time will come for you to experience it all. The door is going to open and it's going to time to experience it all. I just need to make sure that you're ready at the right age. There's a right age for everything. And I know people get antsy, like, your teenage brother, he wants to kind of push his boundaries, his independence. And, and he's been respectful, following the rules. And I allow him to kind of push a little bit because he is still, you do have to experience childhood and you still have to experience the falls and how to get back up, but in a safe environment. And there are certain age when you can handle it. So I want you guys to experience it all, just at a certain age, and when you're ready to, for the consequences that come with it. But yeah, so it's been fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to get teary-eyed that
Yeah.
I've got 1 year left with you. You have been such a joy to raise. I think you've taught me a lot about myself, and you've taught me how to be a better person and a mother, and just kind of raising you has reflected things that I had to fix within myself, or things that I didn't realize what I missed out on. And but I get so excited that I can let you have that. You experience it, and I live through vicariously through you.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Once again, it's been such a joy. I love you, and
you
you and your
too.
brother. You guys have been God-given gifts. I'm so proud of you too. You guys have handled it well. It's like, especially teenage years, it's not easy here at all. It's really tough with all the changes not only on the child, but the parent having to as parents, we have to adapt to every change. I can't parent you how I parent you when you're 13. I got to change my parenting style with each stage, and we're learning how we kind of go with that,
Definitely.
But it's been a joy.
I enjoyed it too.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming. I really enjoyed
an
this
honor.
moment. Thank you so much. You're such a
Love
spirit.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.